Welcome to Grapple Arts Radio.
Hi everybody, Stephan Kesting from GrappleArts.com here. Today I've got a person I've trained with once or twice in the past, Rafael Lovato Jr. on the podcast, and I'm really thrilled to be able to pick his brain about competition because this is a guy who's done a lot of competition. So
yes, thank you.
Welcome to the show. Yeah, I saw you compete in Metamoris 1, and I was just struck by, you had a really relentless and aggressive style that served you very well that night. That was a really nice, because I trained with you before, but I'd never seen you bring the heat in that kind of way.
Yeah, Metamoris, that was I love that event. You know, the rules, the professionalism, the stage, the way they build it up and everything. You know, it has the feeling of like a UFC event for Jiu-Jitsu. And, I was very appreciative and fortunate to be invited to compete at the first one. And, I had a great match with Kyron Gracie. And I think it was one of my better performances in my career. You know, I was playing my game, really opening myself up, attacking from the bottom and the top. I think I tried like 4 or 5 submissions before I got the one that was able to
Kimura in the end, didn't you?
Before I got the Kimura. And basically I was just really playing my game and I was in great shape, and Kyron's a very tough competitor, and he was kind of in a really good phase at that time. He had just won the Pan Ams that year and everything. And I just played my game, and I know a lot of times in the regular sport jiu-jitsu matches, 10 minutes isn't quite enough time to pass someone's guard or be able to, really wear them out and, get the submission. So I really liked the 20 minutes in Metamoris, and it gave me enough time to just, apply my pressure, my top game, and, really work hard to wear him out and make his legs tired and be able to pass his guard so I could get the finish at the end.
Well, question for you. I mean, I've always wondered this about the Metamoris events. They're on this big stage with no fence around it, and were you ever worried about falling off the damn thing?
No, you really don't think about it. In fact, the last one, when I faced Galvao, I got really close to the edge. He had like a single leg, but I wasn't scared. I wasn't worried. You really don't think about it when you're in there. You're just totally focused on the man in front of you.
Mm-hmm. So you like competing under those rules? Just the
yes,
added time?
Yeah, not just the time, but the way that there's no points, there's no advantages. I think it makes it much more pure. You're not fighting for a score or fighting to do, just a little bit more than the other person in a certain amount of time. That along with the nice bonuses they give for the submissions and everything. The guys are really working hard. This last time they had the decision that they put out, which I think maybe could slightly affect the match if the guy has been dominating for 15 minutes, the last 5 minutes, maybe he might take it easy a little bit because he knows he's going to get the decision. But I saw in an interview that Halleck is going to get rid of that, and they're going to go back to submission only or it's a draw. Okay. So we'll see. But yes, I really like those rules. I think the closer that you can make, the match the same as how it is in training, then I think you're gonna see better jiu-jitsu. You're not gonna see people hold back or fight not to lose instead of to really win. And in the end, it makes a better show for the fans, and it also makes our jiu-jitsu better. The competitors that are out there, we can learn more, we can understand more, and we're not just training for a specific set of rules. We're training to actually be complete jiu-jitsu fighters.
But certainly you've done really, really well in sort of, I want to say, conventional jiu-jitsu competition as well, which is kind of understating how difficult it is. Let's talk about your watermark year or your banner year when you, if I recall correctly, you got gold at the European Opens, the Brazilian Nationals, the Pan Ams, and the Mundials. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
What was that like? That must have been an insane year.
Man, it was super insane. That was 2007. That was my third year as a black belt. Well, I completed my third year as a black belt that year. So, it was kind of like the perfect timing for me to, really make my mark. I was like 23 going on 24. And, it had always been my dream to become a world champion, but I could never have imagined it happening that way where I would have won all the tournaments in the same year. That really was
At black belt level.
at the black belt level. Yes, that really was. I don't want to say an accident, but I didn't go into that year like really saying that's what I'm going to do. You know, I was going to be at each competition. In each competition, I wanted to make, I wanted to do to make myself better for the world championships. You know, because the worlds, at the end of the day, if I would have won all three and then lost at the worlds, it wouldn't have mattered. You know, if I lost at all of the other three and then won the worlds, I still would have been very happy. Obviously, you know. So the worlds is the only one that really, really matters. But I just came into that year very, very hungry. You know, I did my first year at the Worlds in 2005 as a black belt, and I reached the quarterfinals, and kind of started getting that experience. First year it's like, okay, almost medaled. It's all right. We'll get better. And then in 2006, I was actually out of the Worlds. I missed the Worlds that year. I was really sick that month, and I already had my ticket to Brazil and everything, and I wasn't able to go. So. I was super disappointed. I was heartbroken. I cried. I was
Think you were overtrained, perhaps? That why you got sick?
No, I actually got mono, and so nothing you could do about that. And I was out the whole month. And so that was really hard. So I missed the Worlds, and so going into 2007, once the gi season picked back up again, I said I'm not missing any competition. I'm going to go to every competition. I want to get as much experience as I can. So I went to the Europeans for the first time in 2007, and I was able to win there. Became the first American to win the Europeans as a black belt, and kept that up going into the Pan. Felt really good at the Pan. And actually both the European and the Pan, I also medaled in the absolute as well.
Oh,
and so then I won the Pan and was the first American to win the Pan as a black belt, and then Brazil. Brazil. It's hard to describe what the feeling is for me personally competing in Brazil, but in some ways, winning in Brazil at the Brasileiro meant just as much, maybe even a little more, than winning the Worlds. The Worlds is the World, so that's nothing's bigger than that. But the Worlds were held in the U.S. that year. That was the first year that they came to the U.S. So in Brazil at that time, the Brasileiro, all the best guys were still pretty much in Brazil. It was an extremely tough competition. And I remember...
Everybody who was anybody in Brazil was there.
Right. And a lot of times you didn't know who those guys were.
Right.
Because the Worlds had just moved to the U.S. later that year. So and just until then, you wouldn't really see or hear too much about the guys in Brazil except, maybe at the Pan or whenever you watch footage of the Worlds, So, in Brazil that year... for me, it's special because I used to go to Brazil so much as a kid and compete and train and learn, and so I competed at the Brasileiro, at the lower belts, and I never won, and so to win as a black belt there in Brazil, by myself, what I mean, was a very special accomplishment for me, and become the first foreigner, non-Brazilian to win the black belt division in Brazil was amazing, and that just really gave me the confidence I needed. Each tournament kind of gave me a little more confidence because it kind of got a little tougher each time. The Europeans step up as the Pan Am, step up as Brazil, step up Worlds, and so going into the Worlds, I started thinking, man, I'm going to do it. I'm going to win all of these, and nothing was going to stop me, and I became the first person to win all four of the major tournaments in the same year as a black belt.
Well, that's very cool. Well, let's jump back a little bit and talk about your background. You started learning martial arts from your dad, and I heard the other day that we actually share a background in the whole JKD,
yes.
Filipino martial arts
yes.
background. So was that your first martial art?
Kind of. I mean, I'm from JKD. Whenever I was just a little kid, we lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's where I was born, and my father was an assistant instructor at a JKD academy there in Cincinnati. And, so I remember going to the academy, all the time. I was with my dad a lot, and, I used to play with my toys on the side of the mat, and things like that. And he actually, the very first martial art I really did, besides for just, playing around the house with my father, was Kempo. He wanted me to do something a little different, and they offered Kempo there. And, he wanted me to have another instructor. He didn't want to kind of like be on the mat with me at the same time. He wanted to keep it a little more relaxed environment for me. So, he put me in something different. So, the first thing I ever did was Kempo. I think I got like an orange belt in that or something. And then, as I got a little bigger, a little older, all I can remember is hitting mitts with my dad, doing tons and tons of boxing and, Thai boxing, things like that. And, then when we moved from Cincinnati to Oklahoma, my father opened a JKD school, and he became, a recognized certified instructor in JKD under Richard Bastillo. And, so then from there, my life was filled with a lot of JKD, everything from Kali to Wing Chun, Pinjak Silat to, tons of boxing and Thai boxing. And I even competed in stick fighting.
So just creating that athletic base,
yeah,
really.
Yeah, and then I got really into boxing. That was the one thing I could compete in. The amateur like Golden Gloves in my area, and that's kind of the first thing I fell in love with. And but then when my dad got introduced to Jiu-Jitsu and he started showing me, Jiu-Jitsu, that just changed everything for me.
What was it about it that reached out and grabbed you?
Well, we already knew that ground fighting was something, in JKD, there was already some ground fighting aspects before, Jiu-Jitsu really came about. And so I remember doing things on the ground and, liking it, but it was very, non-technical, it was rough, and so when we started learning Jiu-Jitsu and, I started playing guard and learning the guard and triangles and things like that. I was kind of a big kid, I was pretty skinny, but I was tall, and so, when I started learning Jiu-Jitsu and I'm like 13 years old, I had the ability to catch grown men in triangles, and things like that. And guys couldn't pass my guard. I could frustrate them, as just a little kid, teenager. And so that really drawed me in. It's like, man, this is something that I feel very natural at, and I can be very good at. I started to see that, and I could give adults a hard time. So who wouldn't love that?
Well, and then, take us a little bit through give me the abbreviated version of your jiu-jitsu journey, who you trained with, and how you got to the point where you're at, which is you're running your own school in Oklahoma.
Well, we've always had the academy in Oklahoma City, and, we kind of just slowly transitioned from a JKD school into more of a jiu-jitsu school with a lot of stand-up, and, so now we were kind of like, the first mixed martial arts school in our area of the country. And from there,
which is appropriate. You can make an argument that Bruce Lee was the first mixed martial artist.
JKD was mixed martial arts. It really was. So I've always kind of had that mindset of taking the best that you can from everything, But in the beginning,
school.
Yeah, in the beginning it was very difficult because to learn jiu-jitsu, you either had to be in California, Florida, or New York, and at that time back in the early 90s. So, it was really rough, but, we traveled a lot. My dad would travel. He would go all the way to California, spend a week or two there, training. And then
with who?
He trained with a lot of different people. In the beginning, he was going to the Gracie Academy. He actually trained at Hickson School quite a bit. And, I actually remember visiting. I have a picture, of Hickson, and I must have been like 12 years old or something. And that was back when Hickson was fighting in Japan. So, he was going there, and then, every year they had the JKD Instructors Conference. And then one of the following years, they brought in the Machado brothers to teach at the JKD conference. And my dad really fell in love with the Machado brothers. Their personalities and the way they taught and everything. So then he was going to the Machado Academy to train. That's back when all five brothers were at the same place. And the Machados had a great American team. They were had a lot of Americans that were competing and doing well. So, then we were kind of more with the Machados, and we got my father got a call one day from Carlos Machado, and he said that he was moving to Dallas, Texas. Chuck Norris was a student of Carlos, and he wanted Carlos to be closer with him, and he was filming in Dallas for the Walker Texas Ranger show. So Carlos became the first, Brazilian, black belt that was in our area of the country, and so Dallas, Texas became the closest place for us, and that was great. 3-hour drive versus going all the way to Los Angeles, was way better. So then from there, my dad started driving down to Dallas, and he kept up a routine of Thursdays. Every Thursday, he would drive down, do a private lesson, train in the group class, and then drive back and then teach at night at the academy. And he did that for about 4 years straight, every week. And, then I used to go down and stay with Carlos. Actually, he let me, stay with him in his house. And when I was like getting into high school, like 14, 15, I would go down and stay with him a lot. And then I started traveling for competitions. The first Pan Ams I did was in 1999. I was 15 years old. And so then, as I got a little older and my father was just, traveling was becoming harder and harder with the academy and everything, he started sending me around more. So I was going to Texas a lot more, and then I was going to California. I would still go to California to train it.
So you were the jiu-jitsu spy sent out to get information and bring it back.
Yeah,
to the
we
academy.
kind of took turns doing that. If it was him or I, he would go, and we'd always, have our notebooks. We'd have questions that if it wasn't my question, maybe it was his question, and
that it's instructive because I get a lot of questions going, Stephan, either through my website or through Facebook or somehow associated with the Grapple Arts thing, where people are coming and saying, Stephan, I live in Podunk, Idaho. We're miles and miles and miles away from any instructors. What do I do? And basically, they have it even easier than you did because you can open up your phone, watch an app, or you can read a book, or you can
all these instructional
YouTube,
sites.
or tons of DVDs, and you can travel. And the key thing really is just training it, just finding some bodies and actually doing it. And then once in a while, I think it's important to go and check in and get your ass kicked by some better people at a better academy, so you can sort of calibrate yourself. But as long as you do that, as long as you actually train the material and then calibrate your material by either competing or going and training at big name jiu-jitsu academy somewhere else, you can make a ton of progress. And you're a testament to that.
Yes, exactly. I'm a 100% believer. It doesn't matter your situation, your circumstance. If you really want it, you can do it. In a lot of ways, I think it's a benefit. Because nowadays, a lot of people are starting to get spoiled. We have so many great, competitors all over the place, great instructors. The access is unlimited. And
I remember when it was a giant deal when there was a guy with a blue belt in the same city
me too.
I was in. Oh my God, there's a blue belt. I gotta go train with him.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. I remember when blue belts were like, whoa, But in a lot of ways, I think it's a benefit because, like I said, what we were doing, we were really studied, because we knew we weren't going to have it the next day or the next week, whatever it was. And, so everything that we learned or was able to experience was just huge for us, and we didn't take anything for granted. We wrote it down. We were like, wow, this is that one thing. A lot of times we would travel. I would go all the way to California and I'd learn stuff, but maybe it would be one thing that really stood out to me, that helped me change my game, and I would, sacrifice so much to learn that one thing. There was no YouTube, there wasn't any of the other stuff, and, but in a lot of ways, I think that helped me become good because
we're like the grumpy old judges. People now, the young folk nowadays have no idea what it was like. But they don't.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And it just made me study so much more, and I think it made me, it was sure there was tons of hardships, not having an instructor in my state, that I could come back to day in, day out, and have a mentor and someone to guide me and help me mold my game. I had to figure it a lot out on my own, but at the end, I feel like I had a better understanding than what most people would have, because I had to do so much of it on my own, had to study so much. And at the same time, we were also teaching, because we would come back and then we would teach our students. And so, we really had to dissect and break everything down. And it made me a better teacher, made me a better jiu-jitsu practitioner. I understood a lot more and just gave me a better jiu-jitsu mind. And nowadays people don't put that sort of energy into it. They kind of go to class, go through the motions, and they don't ask questions, or they know it's going to be there the next day. You know what I mean? And so, in a lot of ways, I think that can be a hindrance, and if maybe they didn't have quite so much of that, they could even get better than what they are now, because they'd have to put more into it, but basically we just did a lot of studying, anytime we could get our hand on some video, some VHS tapes at that time, we would sit back and watch, and we would take notes of what we were watching. We were always drilling. So, anytime that we learned something, we'd come back and just do it over and over again. And a lot of people don't drill like that. And, it's just the really putting everything you have into it, instead of just kind of going through the motions.
Well, speaking of mentors and learning, you eventually made the transition from Carlos Machado to Salafi Barrio. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So it was 2003. I was a 19-year-old brown belt, and I ended up facing Salo in the finals of the Arnold Pro No-Gi Championships in Columbus, Ohio. And that was my first big pro no-gi competition, and I knew Salo was going to be there. He had done it in the years prior, and I was just so pumped for the possible opportunity to face him. And it was like destiny. It really was. We were on opposite sides of the bracket. Obviously he was going to make it to the finals, but I was able to find my way to the finals too. And there I was, matching up with him, and it was a good match. He ended up catching me. He submitted me from mount about 9 minutes in, almost before the end of the time. And I think he saw something in me, and later on he invited me to come train with him in Brazil. Actually, I was in Brazil that year, and I saw him, and he actually came by and picked me up from my hotel, took me to his academy to train. And for me, at that time, at Blue and Purple, I was still doing well, despite not having any high level people to train with. But once I got to brown belt, I faced a lot of hardships. In 2002, I had a lot of losses, and it was hard for me to accept because I was doing so well. But it came to a point where I just that mentorship, and the high level training with other world champion, black belt, competitors, people that had done or were trying to do what I was trying to do. Not having that was becoming a hard thing. It was affecting me a lot. And so then my confidence started messing with me and everything. And so brown belt was definitely my toughest belt. It really was. But that's when I started to get to train with Salo, and we started developing a relationship. He came to Oklahoma, and then in 2004, I actually spent an extended period of time in Brazil. I had a good feeling that I would be getting my black belt soon, and I wanted to be the best black belt I could be. So I sacrificed a lot, saved up a lot of money, and I said, man, I'm going to go to Brazil for a few months. I want to train as much as I can, compete as much as I can, because when I get my black belt, I want to be good. I don't want to be just a regular black belt, And so I went to Brazil, and I ended up training with Shanji, every day. We were
Salo's brother.
Yes, Salo was still in the U.S. He was kind of making the transition. So he was doing some things in the U.S., but he came later in the summer for the Worlds, and I just at that time I became part of the team, part of the family, and I remember going to Toledo, Ohio, all the time. That's where they were kind of stationed at. In the U.S., they had a lot of affiliate academies in the Midwest, and Toledo, Ohio is not like your number one vacation destination. And, we would just go out there, and it was just hard training every day, just incredible, hard training. And I I went through a lot, to experience that. Then at that time, I was a brand new black belt, and I'm wearing the same belt as them, but I'm getting completely throttled, every day. And, training with Salo and Shanji back and forth at that time,
You're either going to die or you're going to get better.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. And I survived. And, fortunately, I think my father, his discipline that he put in me and the hard work, allowed me to be able to survive that hard training. And I started, man, these guys believe in me. We're going to the competitions together. We're flying all over together. We're training together. Why can't I do it? And so I started getting some good wins, and from there, everything just started falling into place.
Okay. I'm assuming that built, the way you're framing it, that built the mental toughness that then served you well later on in your competition career.
Yeah, for sure. I think it came down to my father. My father he's a extremely disciplined man, very hardworking, and I would just follow him, and that's really what put me into martial arts. Of course, is like every other son, wanting to make his dad proud, and so I think it started with my father, and 100%, he. I was training hours and hours, when I was 11 years old, I was training all day, so that hard work and the never quitting, the discipline and understanding that if I put the work in, I can achieve anything. That started with my father, and then that carried into, Salo. And then the thing that Salo and Shanji really gave me was the confidence and the guidance, because until then I didn't have any other world champion black belt, telling me, all right, this is what you have to think and feel and do to go out there and become a world champion black belt. It's different. You have to become a different person.
What's different about it? Can you give me some examples of like the switch that needs to be made, the changes that?
Well, like the person that you are on a normal everyday basis. When you're with your friends, you're with your family, you can't be that person when you're on the mat or in the cage or wherever, in that sort of combat, where it's man versus man or woman versus woman, this person versus that person, you have to be, it's hard to explain. When I describe it to my students, I tell them that you have to be kind of like a superhero, whatever regular normal human thoughts that you have, or doubts, or things that come into your mind every day, that has to be completely shut off when you're out there. And I didn't understand that at first, I was really, I grew up in Oklahoma, so for me it was like nice Southern hospitality, humble, quiet. I was very, kind of like in this enclosed atmosphere in Oklahoma, and so going out to those competitions, I was like, sometimes I was, a little unsure of myself. And with Salo and Shanji, with Salo especially, telling me like, how to make that mental switch and what to think and feel and to kind of have this like extra level to turn myself up to. I had to train myself and really develop that.
How do you train that? Do you
mental training?
Visualization?
Yeah, okay, lots of visualization.
Because this is something that a lot of my readers, in particularly, asked me about when they heard that I was doing this interview with you on the Facebook page. People can go look at it if they want. I'd say there were the most questions by far were about the mental aspects of competition and how do you prepare mentally for that.
You see, and that's something that like when Salo was telling me these things and I was starting to learn these things, I don't think Salo spent time doing as much visualizations and things like that, because he already had that. He already knew that. He was already very confident in himself. He'd already been successful a lot at the lower belts. He didn't have to go through, I mean, I'm not saying he'd have to have hardships, but, he had Royler Gracie, one of the greatest competitors of all time, mentoring him. And so when I first found that, and I started to understand that for me to hit the next level, I was going to have to be mentally stronger. It was going to be the number one thing that was going to help me hit the next level. I had to train, I had to really work on finding that zone to become successful as a black belt, especially at that time, because at that time, I remember the days when going to Brazil to compete in the World Championships, there would be a handful of non-Brazilians that would medal in the whole competition, not just as a black belt, in the whole competition, blue, purple, brown, any belt, there would be 3 or 4, and you'd always knew who those guys were, and so the confidence level was different then, for Americans, or non-Brazilians in general, because it just hadn't been done yet. It hadn't been done where there was several Americans medaling, and winning and doing well. The only one who had any success really was BJ. Of course he won gold, and there was other
BJ Penn.
Yeah, BJ Penn. There was other Americans who medaled here and there. Garth Taylor, Albert Crane. Some of these guys, but it was just so rare that in competing in Brazil, it was a different vibe. It was a different vibe than what it is now. Now with the Worlds in the U.S. and you're more familiar with the competitors. Back then,
you have no idea who
it was very well, and it was more mythical. Everyone was mysterious. You heard of all the best guys, but the only way you could really see them is if you went to Brazil and saw them live in action. And then you would be fighting. Then here I was fighting those guys after I'd been kind of like
idolized,
trained mentally to look up to them so much. And so I had to go through a lot to overcome those barriers and say, man, it's just another man, and I deserve this as well. I've put in the work. I can beat anybody, And, so it came down to, having the reinforcement from Salo and Shanji, and then developing my mind to where I would exclude any doubts in my mind and, what I was saying to myself. And I had a lot of battles with that. Sometimes I'd be very good, and then other times maybe I'm facing a guy who has a big name, and I'd say, if I lose to this guy, it's okay. You know what I mean?
So what's your toughest opponent that you fought that you've won in competition? Do you care to throw a name out there? Are you going to insult everybody that you fought and also beat?
That's really hard to say, because I faced nearly everybody, and I haven't beat everybody, but I've been fortunate to beat a lot of world champions and top competitors, but like I was saying with the mental aspects, I think the number one challenge, the number one person that I have to overcome is always going to be myself, to have the confidence and to exclude all the negative thoughts out of my mind, with the visualization and the auto suggestion is something I say to myself.
What do you say to yourself? What specifically do you say to yourself?
It's like a parrot. It's very long.
Okay.
I have it and I read it over and over in competitions. It's in my phone. Something that I wrote that is very emotional for myself. And it's pretty much just something that it makes me think back to all the work I've put in for all the years, and who I am and what I've been able to overcome, and it gives me that drive, that fire, and that confidence to go out there and not let anything stop me. Not let anything hinder me from having my best performance. And if I can put on my best performance and I still lose, I can accept that way more than holding back and being nervous and scared and going out there and barely showing my game and then, losing because of that, So it's just that, and that's what really, a lot of people said there was the me before Salo and the me after Salo. And the thing that changed the most was my mental state.
Okay. Well, here you're talking about your mental state. Well, we've talked about your mental state. Let's talk a little bit about the technique side. Let's start with your guard passing game. It's going to be hard to do on an audio interview, but we're going to try. Mm-hmm. Like I said before, I was really struck by your aggressive and relentless guard passing approach to guard passing in competition. And I know you've got some products out on guard passing, so obviously you've taught this aspect of your game a lot. What are some takeaway points? What are your top 3 tips for how to pass the guard of a high level guy?
Wow. Well, to help you understand how that developed for me, like before, not only did Salo and Shanji help complete me mentally, also technically, it was really awesome because I ended up training with a lot of people, because I was traveling and things like that, and the one position, the one area of my game that I developed the most and felt the most comfortable with, because I started as a kid, was my guard, obviously, because that's the first thing you could do as a kid.
Fighting bigger adults.
Yeah, exactly. And so I always kind of came up as a guard guy, and a lot of the guys I was training with had very good guards, and so I always kind of kept up with learning and understanding a lot about the guard. And then Salo and Shanji are one of two of the best top players that have ever been in the game, and so it helped me so much in both ways, because when I started to train with them, I was feeling and experiencing how they were just killing my guard, just completely shutting down my guard. And, I was very proud of my guard, and so I was analyzing and studying how they were killing my guard. And also, of course, I'm asking them questions, and I'm learning from them, and I'm starting to apply their, techniques and principles to my passing game. And it really just kind of ended up completing my jiu-jitsu and made me have like a very well-rounded jiu-jitsu where I feel comfortable on bottom and top. But their style of passing was very different from what I had experienced before. The pressure and the smashing and the forcing half guard and mounting, things like that. Where at that time I was more about, passing to side control, bullfighting a lot. I had a good cross knee pass. My passing wasn't horrible, but I wouldn't go out and win competitions with my passing only. I'd win with my guard, and so I said, man, I need to bring this into my game, and so I started putting it together, and that's what I really, have developed the most. Like the biggest jump in my game since being a black belt is definitely in my top game, and so when I started putting out these passing products and things like that, and teaching my passing game, what I've developed personally from what I've learned over the years from Salo and Shanji. And,
is that the pressure guard passing?
Yes, okay. My pressure passing system. I wanted to get that out there because I think so many people neglect developing their top game the same way they develop their guard. Because the guard is very pretty. It's kind of the essence of jiu-jitsu,
Sure.
Being on bottom and being able to submit people and use leverage to sweep them and things like that. It's very pretty. Passing's not as pretty, and it's not, the guard's always having new developments all the time. So it's easy to kind of get sucked into that and want to do that all
down the guard rabbit hole.
Yeah, and do that all the time and not spend the same time and energy on your passing. And so I wanted to get that out there right away so people wouldn't wait as long as I did, and they would understand some different concepts that maybe they don't normally learn when it comes to passing. So that being, the smashing, the pressure. How do you make people feel every single ounce of your weight, plus some.
How do you do that?
It depends on the position. It's hard to explain, with words, but one thing I try to do is stay on my toes. I try to stay forward, and you could see that a lot in my match with Kyron and Metamoris. Half the time I was almost just kind of laying on him, kind of the blanket effect, to wear out his legs, making the person use their hands to push you off instead of having grips, and wearing them out and forcing your way in, going through the guard instead of trying to go around it, instead of trying to beat the legs. Instead, you go through, and get to the hips, controlling the hips, understanding that passing the guard isn't about, beating the legs. It's more about controlling the hips. And then, going through means a lot of times you're going to go to the half guard, whereas that used to feel kind of bad to me. Now I like to go into the person's half guard, and I see it much differently. I see it now. I'm halfway to mount, instead of I'm in half guard.
Which is funny because that's how it used to be back in the day.
Right.
Like ages ago, it was the half guard was one step short of having your guard passed. Then this whole
all the
phrase,
guard games came out, and everyone has a guard game for every position,
And the half guard became a dominant position, and
Yes.
now we're almost seeing the flip side. It's going back to the way it was.
Yeah.
With the half guard is an oh crap kind of position when you're facing somebody who can neutralize it and shut it down.
Exactly. Yeah. There's definitely two kinds of half guard. There's a good half guard for the guy on bottom, and then there's a very bad one where you're going to get mounted. And that was the last kind of piece was I didn't have a great mount. I wasn't comfortable with mount. I had some good submissions from side control, the Kimura, good Bravo choke, and some other things I like to do. But I like never mounted anybody, and I never finished anyone from mount. It was very rare until I started training a lot with Solomon Shanji, and I understood then how powerful the mount position was and how passing directly to mount, was just utterly demoralizing for the person on bottom, and how powerful that was. And that keeps your weight on them. It's different than going around. A lot of times your weight comes off when you go to the side control, But if you go to mount, your weight is on them the whole time, and you're kind of getting smothered, And I was experiencing that firsthand, And so I was like, man, I want to do this to somebody else. I'm tired of getting it done to me. And from there, getting comfortable with my mount added a whole new element to my passing game, because then it wasn't about always going to side control. I would feel comfortable with going to mount and then being able to finish from there. And those are the things I'm trying to teach now to the jiu-jitsu world, and the feedback has been amazing. I get so many messages from people who are members of my online coaching program, or people that have bought my DVDs before, saying how my techniques have really helped them, take their game to the next level, whether it's just in the academy or in competition and things like that. And that really means a lot to me now, and I'm putting a lot more things out there now. I'll definitely be filming a guard series later on this year, and right now I have a passing system for gi and no gi, and actually I just released a submission series too, kind of the follow-up after we pass. How do we attack? Mm-hmm. And those, all of them are doing very well. People could see information about my submission series at sealthedealbjj.com, and if they go to scienceofthegame.com, science of the game, they can see information about my passing products and other things that I'm doing.
And I know you've also got because I have it, an iPhone app on the Omoplata, but you're saying it's being redone and it's going to be coming out in a little bit?
We made a couple changes. It came off the market for a little bit. I'm going to put it back up there now. Just kind of start building up for a complete guard series I'm going to do later on this year.
Okay. Yeah, I really enjoyed that little app. That's the only one of the products I've seen so far.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I did to kind of get myself out there a little more and help me get comfortable teaching in front of the camera and everything. And the Omoplata is one of my favorite techniques from the guard, and a lot of people, have liked that.
A man with taste, ladies and gentlemen. A man with taste. As we're coming into the end of the interview here, I got to ask you about the whole strength and conditioning aspect and cardio aspect. How much do you do in the lead up to a competition?
I do a lot.
What specifically do you do? Can you give us an example of a workout with specific exercises and specific reps? Not so that people go out and do it verbatim, but it's always interesting to see what a top level guy is doing.
Well, for me, ever since I was young, the hard work, my father, put into me, I've always been into doing strength and conditioning in some form, way or other. Back when I was younger, I didn't really know. I didn't have the mind to be able to create a program for myself, and so a lot of it I was kind of just taking from other people, what they did or what I felt was good for me. And so every now and then I would get experience with a high level trainer, and I would start to use it. And I would just kind
of bicep curls and bench press.
Yeah, that is not what you want to do for jiu-jitsu. But so I've been developing that area of my training as well over the years. And the last couple years, I'm very fortunate to meet my trainer that I have now, Luke Tyree, and he's there and just not too far away from me in Oklahoma. And he has a world-class facility. He's an incredible trainer. He's worked with a lot of professional athletes before, and he's really helped me take that to the next level. And for me, I think it's especially important because I think it's important for everyone. Don't get me wrong, but if for me, I don't have high-level black belts to train with every day. 97% of my training is done with my students there in Oklahoma City. So obviously, they're not going to push me to that level, where I'm going to be really tired. I make it happen.
Sure.
I'll have them all
you can put yourself in
rotate on me and things like that. But the way I'm going to really feel, what I could feel in competition is going to be in the gym, and so I take it very seriously, and I push myself really hard in the gym, and basically he helped me become smarter with how I work in there in the gym, and so what we do is we do 2 days a week that's focused on strength, and 2 days a week that's focused on conditioning. The day in the middle, Wednesday, is a recovery day, and that was a huge thing for me. I used to, because of this attitude and how I thought, no one can work harder than me. I need to do something every day.
Nobody can break my body down better than me.
Yeah. If there was a time where I was taking off, I would feel guilty. I used to have this guilty feeling if I wasn't training or if I wasn't super sore or tired. It's like, I didn't do enough today. And so I used to overdo it a lot, and that would cause me to get, some injuries and little things nagging me in my body. So not only did my training become better, but it became much smarter. So Wednesday is a recovery day. I'm very, I try to be very smart on Wednesdays, because if I keep it up through Wednesday, by the time I hit Saturday, I'm a mess, So basically I have, Monday and Thursday is strength, Tuesday and Friday is conditioning. I take it easy a little bit Friday night, because Saturday is my hardest day of training. At my academy, we used to do somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 hours of very hard drilling and competition training. And, typical workouts are going to be a blend of a lot of different things. I might do some circuit training. The strength days, I'm going to obviously focus more on the strength.
So what lifts are you doing? Whole body stuff?
Probably the lift that I do the most is deadlift.
Okay.
Deadlift and squat. Deadlift is kind of like probably the best lift that we could do as jiu-jitsu fighters. But deadlifts, I do a lot of pull-ups, a lot of grip training, a lot of variations on pull-ups, everything from rings to rope pull-ups to gi pull-ups to fat bar pull-ups, chin-ups, the whole spectrum. A lot of grip training, but deadlifts, pull-ups, the prowler. The prowler is like
I have no idea what a prowler is.
It would just be a piece of equipment that you would think of for football players, where you're kind of pushing something. There's high handles, there's low handles. You can stack weights on the prowler, and that's probably the one thing that really just makes you feel absolutely dead. Like a jiu-jitsu competition could make you feel. It really gets that lactic acid and everything built up in your body, fries your legs, completely destroys your legs. But the prowler is kind of like your worst best friend, and then we do a lot of sled drags. A lot of pulling the sled around, and then a lot of kettlebell swings. Kettlebells are great for the grips, and so he'll develop a lot of circuits within those exercises, and of course other stuff. And then he'll push me hard with the cardio. With the prowler, a lot of sprinting. We do a lot of hill sprints. Because jiu-jitsu is very, hard and then kind of slow, and so I think the best form of cardio that you can do specifically would be, with sprints, and I take a lot of that and apply it to the training as well. On the mat where I'm doing, really hard bursts of rounds. We do like 90-second bursts a lot, where it's like a battle to get the score, a battle to pass or a battle to sweep. It's different situational trainings. A lot of like takedown training is a great way to tire yourself out on the mat, and drilling for, trying to hit a certain number of reps within a certain amount of time, that can push you on the mat as well. So I kind of just, do a little bit of everything, but, he keeps it very simple. And the key is I don't leave the gym so dead that I can't train at night. I feel better getting my conditioning workout in the day. I feel better when I'm on the mat later. I feel like my body is, stronger and more like warmed up. And
of course, you've also built that up over 20 years of training.
Yes.
Your body's ability to handle that.
Right.
Before somebody goes out there and tries to do this, jump from the desk job.
Right.
Quit being a computer programmer, and I'm going to start training 3 times a day the way Rafael does.
Yeah. You got to be smart. You got to know your body, and that's the other thing is getting to understand my body, knowing when I need to stop. I used to never stop, then I wasn't training well. I'd be too broken down. I didn't want to leave the workout or the gym until I knew I was going to be sore or I was going to be really tired. And it's not about that. It's about making yourself better on the mat, and then within that, I do a lot of recovery work, a lot of foam rolling. I get the lacrosse ball and all my knots and take the time to stretch a lot and do a lot of joint mobility. And that was the other piece that he really brought into my training, was the recovery aspects, which is extremely important. A lot of people neglect.
The very last thing I want to talk about is, before the interview, you gave me some really cool news about Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
So why don't you share it with the listeners here?
Yeah.
What's going on with you there?
Just this week, the ADCC invitations are getting sent out. Kind of now that the Worlds are over, Metamorphosis is done, all eyes are on ADCC. It's an ADCC year. So that's going to be the big thing to complete the year. And I was very happy to receive my invitation again. This will be my 4th time at ADCC.
Wow.
And on the other hand, at the last ADCC in 2011, I had my first and second black belts with me. James Popolo is my second black belt. He won a trials to go to the ADCC, and then Justin Rader, my first black belt, received his invitation, and he competed at ADCC for the second time. And so the last ADCC, there was 3 of us, 2 of my students and myself, and then this time around, I had another student who actually won the ADCC trials as a blue belt. His name is Jared Dopp. He's going to be one for people to keep their eyes on. He's an incredible athlete, very, very smart, and now he's a purple belt. And he's coming up. He took second at the Worlds this year. He was a blue belt world champion, gi and no gi, last year. And he's going to be a very, very tough up-and-comer over the next couple of years. But he won a trials. James Popolo won another trials, who was my second black belt. And then I got my invitation. And then just this week, Justin Rader received his invitation. So I have 3 students, and then myself, making 4 of us. From Team Lovato, and we have compiled the biggest American team to ever compete at one ADCC. I have a person in all but one of the weight classes for the male divisions, and we're making history again. So I'm very proud of that, because because I've been teaching since I was so young, I am getting to compete alongside a lot of my black belts,
the next generation,
and a lot of my guys, who are doing really well, and it brings another element of satisfaction for me in my career. Especially getting to compete alongside my black belts is a big thing. Justin Rader and myself, we both won the no-gi world championships on the same day in 2010. As an American teacher and student black belt combo, winning world titles, and it's just that history making aspect and being able to kind of pave the way for the next generation and compete alongside my students and things. It's a special thing for me, and I look forward to competing with my black belts, as much as possible in the future. But obviously my time in the adult division, the highest level, is getting shorter. I just turned 30. I still have a good few more years left.
You're a young whelp.
Yeah, I still have a few more years left in me, but it's so awesome to compete alongside my black belts, and the opportunity that we could both win on the same day, or do something amazing like that, really excites me, and it makes me proud as my work as a teacher and instructor, and I'm just really happy and excited for the ADCC now.
Well, I look forward to following your career and the career of your students in competition and everything else that you're up to. So we're going to have to draw this to a close, yes, because you've got a seminar to teach and I've got a seminar to watch or participate in. And so we're going to get you off to that. Awesome. Thank you so much for the interview. And if anyone wants to find the transcript for it, it'd be at grappelarts.com/Lovato, Lovato.
Yes.
So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to say in closing, for all my fans and everybody out there, of course, appreciate all the support. And, please follow me on Facebook, LovatoJuniorFans.com, and check out my site, LovatoJunior.com, to hear everything that I have going on, all my products and everything else. And, look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thank you.